In the last section, we decided to add a spinner component to our application that should appear whenever the user clicks the login button right here. Then when the login request is complete, we should restore the button and make the spinner go away. Because I expect to use this spinner in many different locations, I want to create it as a reusable component. That's why we're making a separate component here for this spinner. So fortunately, we don't have to make the whole animated spinner, the spinny thing from scratch. The React Native library includes a default spinner that we can use. So we're going to use a default spinner, and inside this component, we're just going to add on some additional styling on top of it to kind of further configure and style the spinner itself. So from the React Native library, we will import that default spinner as activity indicator. Indicator, there we go. Okay, so we've got our activity indicator. This is an actual spinner. If we place it on the screen, you're gonna see this kind of like a little dial thing moving around. Next, we're gonna place that spinner inside of our view here. So I'm still gonna keep the view tag. I'm going to keep the view tag around so we can position the activity indicator. So I'll keep the view and expand the tag and then place the activity indicator like so. Again, the whole purpose of keeping the view tag here is so that we can make this thing, or we can position the spinner nicely inside of it. Specifically, I want to be able to center the activity indicator or the spinner on the screen, and we're going to use the view tag to do that. So to make sure that the activity indicator is always centered on the screen, we'll add in a style tag that's going to put in some positioning properties on top of the view tag. Also, I think I missed a semicolon here, so I'm going to place that as well. So I'll place my styles object, const styles, at the bottom, and I'll give it a single property here called spinner style, like so. So this spinner style will be applied to the view tag, and its purpose is to make sure that the spinner is centered on the screen. So to make sure that view tag fills up the full width of the screen, I want it to fill up the full width, I'm going to give it a flex 1. And then to center the activity indicator itself, we'll use our justify content of center and align items of center as well. Finally, we will apply the spinner style to the view tag. So on the view tag, we'll say, hey, you should get your style from styles.spinner style. Okay, so this is pretty much all we need right now to at least get a spinner on the screen and make sure that it's nicely centered. There is one last thing that we need to do here. The activity indicator, by default, has two possible properties that you can assign to it. Well, actually, I should say one property, and that property has two different options to it. We can pass a size property to the activity indicator, and that indicates whether or not we want this to be large or small. So we can either say I want a large spinner, so something that takes up a decent amount of space on the screen, or I can pass in a small property here, in which case we'll get a much smaller spinner to appear. So we will assume that we will pass in the size of the spinner as a prop to this component. And we're going to pass it in as a prop called size. Remember, these prop names that I'm pulling out here are all completely arbitrary, completely random. I am just deciding that I want to pass my component that I'm creating a prop called size. Now, this size prop that I'm passing to the activity indicator, however, this is a special name here. This is a component that we did not create, we did not write. So it has some number of built-in or default props that we can pass it, one of which is called size. Now we're going to use a little bit of a trick here to assign the size property to the activity indicator. So let's write out the code for it first, and we'll talk about what it does. I'm going to write out size or large. What this does right here is it says if we pass in a size property when we create the spinner, then use that. Otherwise, if we did not pass in a size property, use the string large. So by default, if we do not specify the size for our spinner, we're going to get a large one. Otherwise, if we say specifically that we want a small one, we will get a small one. So this is just a little shortcut for handling that logic. All right, so I think we're just about done here. The last thing we have to do is wire this thing up inside of our login form. Let's take care of that in the next section.